This is Geek Gab with your hosts, John and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Saturday, September 29th, 2018. And I had to stop myself as I was about to say that because I had to think for just a quick fraction of a second. What year is this? Is this still 2018? No, it's 2018. We're not 2019 yet. Okay, well, let's go with that. Hoping that it didn't come out wrong. Welcome to the show, everybody. I have some big news, some breaking news. A few weeks ago, your host, was out in the middle of the boonies at a large get-together, and then I had to drive an hour to get back in range of a telephone so that I could do the show back in range of a cell tower so I could do the show on my cell phone. And completely coincidentally, my fellow host, Dornall, is in point of fact doing the show also on his phone today. So,
hey,
how are things going, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. I had vacation this week, and I've been at a cabin in the woods by the majestic, dormant volcano, Mount Rainier, hanging out with a big crew of gamers. We've been hanging out, eating food, playing board games for the past 2 days. In fact, I actually forgot it was Saturday. I needed a reminder. I'm thankful that we've got good Wi-Fi at the cabin, so I didn't have to drive an hour. But it's a beautiful day, beautiful countryside, and but I'm inside right now hanging out because I wanted to chat with my good friends, DW and Jon Del Arroz. How's it going, man?
So what kind of games have you been playing this weekend?
The type of board games that tickle my fancy, take a little bit of time and a little thought. My favorite game right now is called Terraforming Mars.
Oh, I love that game. That's a good game.
And we've talked about that on the
great. We're gonna have to play sometime. It's a strategy game with a big pile of cards, and the premise of the game is that every player is a big corporation, and we're trying to terraform Mars. And there's a lot of moving parts, but playing it is really easy. And the fun part of the game is you've got all these cool projects that you can fund that'll help terraform Mars, or maybe you're not going to help terraforming Mars and you're just going to get a bunch of points doing scientific research or something like that. It sounds super nerdy, but it's got great humor, great art, and it's genuinely fun to play.
Really good, like on the strategic, like resource management side of things too.
Exactly, the resource management is really powerful there because you have to make really tough decisions every turn. Which what cards you're going to play and what actions you're going to take, and it really rewards you planning your turn out. You say, I think I want to do these two things, and that's it. And like any really good board game, there's 20 things that you can do. So the challenge is figuring out the one or two things that you really need to do. Plus, and I'm going to spoil this for anybody who hasn't played, everybody should know that Mars has 2 moons. Well, one of the moons you can build a city on, and the other moon you can slam into the surface of the planet to generate greenhouse gases and valuable metals. Yeah.
I had a quick procedural question because you're on the phone and I realize you can't see the group chat and you also can't see the YouTube chat. So, I'm kind of keeping an eye out on that. Do you know your camera's on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
Just checking.
Did you mention that because we're getting complaints?
Yes, actually, we have an entire one of those signature sites has been set up, to ask the White House to to have you turn off your camera. I don't know how effective that's going to be, but apparently that is in there. I wanted to
set up a White House petition. We'll sign it.
What?
I wanted you to see how where I am. It's a beautiful cabin. I'm inside right now. I'm not going to show you all the. I'm not going to show you all the trees. I can point you at the window. This is what I'm dealing with. I don't know if y'all can see that, but
Jeffro wants to know if you want to reveal your face. I'm getting the impression he's asking because of like a security concern or something. I don't know.
I have no security concerns or anything like that. I've been my identity has been known for a long time. I use the thing about my username Dornal is that it doesn't mean anything. It's just a unique name. I used it for a D&D character a million years ago, but it's effectively a self-dox. I am Dornal. Wherever you look on the internet, that's me. So here's my face. Here's my face.
I wanted to mention real quick.
I can turn on my camera and show everybody the kale berry protein shake I'm making.
I don't think anybody's excited by that, but you know, if you wanted to, go for it. I did want to talk about something strange before we actually get officially going with John, because I found it so strange. Lindsay Lohan, who's in Europe, live streamed on the internet herself following a family at night, trying to take the children away from the parents, and then she got slapped or punched by the mom, and then went off crying about how terrifying the whole thing was. I don't have a big position. I mean, I could get up on a soapbox and talk about how narcissistic Hollywood stars are and they only exist in their own little world, or how fame makes you into a narcissist, even if you're not, because you're so insulated from like regular people. All you spend time with is other famous people, because otherwise it gets really weird. I could talk about a lot of things like that, but I read the story and I was like, what the hell? I don't have a point. I'm just like, what the hell? Can I get a what the hell from the audience?
Was there any onus to her? Why was there any context to why she was following them around doing that, or like
apparently they're Middle Eastern, and she thought they were, or she thought they were. She thought that they were. She accused them of child trafficking, and told the kids to come with her. She thought that the two kids that they had, they were engaged in human trafficking with the kids.
I mean, I guess that's a valid reason for vigilante justice, but I mean, you better prove that, you know.
I mean, yeah, were the kids adopted? Did they not look like they were the children of the parents, or what?
I haven't watched the video. I have secondhand accounts of the video.
Because if it's Middle Easterns and it was a couple little black kids, I think maybe that's a stretch. But yeah,
anyways, I actually was wasting my time before the show not watching this video, but watching a PBS video about the crisis in math. Again, I know I did that 3 weeks ago and it like ruined the opener of the show because I was just all up thinking about the golden ratio and stuff, and you know, but I got that out of my system. We talked about math for like 10 minutes before the show began, math and physics and things like that. So I got that out of my system so we could come here on the show.
Math and Lindsay Lohan, that's what we're here for today.
Yeah, it is. That is the unique mix you get when you tune into Geek Gab. Is you have no idea what we're going to talk about. That's actually death, by the way. That is absolute death on YouTube. If you notice that, all the people who are very successful on YouTube, they have a theme to their channel. They have one thing that they do, and they do it well, and they concentrate on that. So you go to this channel for guys doing crazy shots with bows, and you go to another channel for people talking about medieval weaponry, and you go to another channel because they're comics reviews. If you want to be successful, and the same thing also applies to literature, to publishing. Like if you're writing books, you focus on one thing and you focus on that so that people can go to you and they reliably know what they're going to get.
I'm very bad at that.
Bernie bots every flavored beans in the real world would have a big problem because, you know, normal people wouldn't want to buy something. They have no idea what they're going to eat, what it's going to taste like. I mean, would you buy a candy that has like a not insignificant chance of tasting like vomit? Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, my brother tried to put that shit on me before. That was terrible.
That almost
he warned me too. He warned me too. He said, "Hey, John, eat this crap." And I said, "No. Why would I risk that?"
What's not terrible is my frozen organic cherry, strawberry, blueberry, and kale mix. It's just good stuff, guys.
I know kale was evil when I found out that it's the same plant. It's the same species as broccoli and cabbage and kale. They're the same plant.
It's all the same plant.
It's
all the same plant. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts.
All right, here's the blender. Here's the blender right here. If you guys can see it. It's so this is so it's my mix of berries there. I've got flaxseed, hemp seed, chia seed, coconut shreds, bananas, and almond milk. In addition to this mix, and this is and then a little protein powder also. So that's what I'm eating for lunch.
I felt better about myself when I realized I could recognize pure evil in its most its most disguised form when I hit that pure evil of knowing the force. Okay, so. By the way, folks, if you haven't figured it out, our guest today is Jon Del Arroz, and he has 2 comic books out that have sort of a loose fire theme going on. There's Ember War, because embers come off a campfire, and there's also Flying Sparks, because sparks fly off a campfire, and I'm wondering... was that sort of thematic link there? Was that deliberate on your part?
Crap. Now I'm realizing that
on fire is the tagline I used. Your comics are on beautiful. Fire.
He's on Twitter right now, changing his username to put fire emojis in it.
I also put. Maybe your comics are literally on fire because the people who hate you are buying them and burning them. I mean, is that happening?
I would love to see that because that'd be the best promotional tool I could ever have in my whole life. But no, total accident. And I realized after you said that I just wrapped up writing a novel called Alt Hero, and one of my characters actually shoots fire from his eyes, and his name's Firestarter. So I apparently just do this in every single book because I guess I'm like a Beavis and Butthead kind of guy going fire, yeah, cool.
So let's do with Flying Sparks first. That came out a month ago?
Yeah, on Indiegogo. It actually hasn't hit shelves yet, so people haven't seen it.
Is it still for sale? Can people still buy it on Indiegogo?
Yeah, that's part of why I chose Indiegogo rather than Kickstarter, was because you can put up a store online that just keeps selling the book afterwards. So I cut off all the T-shirt and posters so we could just do a run of that. And then I'm going to have it up. Basically, I did a pretty large print run, was why I wanted to do this, because it's not exactly the same as putting books up on Amazon where it's all print on demand. I actually printed 1,000 books, so it's like I can just keep that up there until I sell them and just keep shipping them, which is nice.
By the way, folks, I have, and this should not surprise you, being the general run of the show, I have links to both Ember War and Flying Sparks right now underneath the video. So you can go check those out right now or at the end of the movie or, whenever.
And buy the Ember War first, because that still needs to fund. So if you're doing one, that's the one to go for right now.
Oh, and that's something I wanted to talk about. Not necessarily right now. That was actually the one subject that's kind of inside baseball that I want to pound the table about. Every single show, it tends to run into some kind of subject I actually wanted to pound the table about anyway, and we just accidentally have an opportunity that comes up. But I wanted
that's an interesting point. Are you talking about having juggling multiple Kickstarter, Indiegogo crowdfunding campaigns at the same time?
I wanted to pound the table about how Indiegogo is not a long-term sustainable model for alternative comics. Not right now necessarily, but I want to get to that.
It's not just comics. I think the whole thing is interesting. I think aren't we seeing crowdfunding fatigue in just about everything? Crowdfunding is really popular for board games as well, and you get some really high quality stuff coming out. But just people realize that they're dropping $100, $200, $300 on games all the time, and you just can't keep up with all the amazing stuff coming out.
Yes. So, anyways, but let's talk about Flying Sparks. Your very first comic, available for sale now on Indiegogo at the link below the video. And the theme of Flying Sparks was a hero and a villain falling in love.
Oh yeah, my favorite moments in comics over history were basically like Spider-Man and Mary Jane, or Batman and Catwoman. Not the Tom King stuff that Daddy Warpig wrote an article about a couple months ago, but just the overall Batman Catwoman relationship, things like that. I think when you add the superhero drama and the lying that necessarily you have to do to your partner and things like that, it adds such a level of complexity to the characters and into the story that it just really lifts the storyline overall in terms of drama and in terms of just high tension conflict. So I just wanted to have a book that's about that all the time.
So I have been told or have heard that scripting for comics is a very, very difficult thing, and that you have to be very, very, very parsimonious with your words, even more so than a short story. Was Flying Sparks your first comic script?
No, I wrote a few short comics ahead of time that I just kind of trained myself to do it with. I did a Western where, it was just a cowboy tying up a villain and, winning. And then I had a samurai story where it was just, a duel across a bridge, classic samurai style, just so I can get my, get a feel for doing things. I don't have the art for those anymore, so I have no idea. I don't even know what happened to them. I think I lost them on a computer years and years and years ago, unfortunately. But I started there. But Flying Sparks was my first full-length graphic novel, sort of ongoing superhero concept. And it's still really the only ongoing story I've attempted to write. I mean, I've got the Ember War now, which is a 5-issue thing, but that is a complete story right there. Like Flying Sparks, I'm really intending on just being a superhero universe in the old pulp style that you can just keep going with and keep going with and keep going with. And each issue kind of has its own storyline to it, but it also develops the character a little bit. That's the stuff in the 60s and 70s that made Marvel and DC kind of charming that, that kind of we lost today a little bit. And also, I don't know, it's just, you don't get that a lot in indie comics either, because people write to the trade paperback now.
So do you have plans for publishing another volume after this?
Oh, yeah. I've been mentioning that for a while. So I've already got volume 2 done. Part of this crowdfund was just, I wanted to see if there was a market out there. And then I had to redo a lot of my dialogue because I wrote this back in 2012, and I'm a much better writer now than I was in 2012. So I had to redo my dialogue, pay for my lettering, get a nice cover on it, and then do the print run. And so I wanted to do that, see if there was a market for it. But now it's gone a lot further than I expected it to. So I'm getting the dialogue redone for volume 2 and covering all that also. So I don't know when I'm going to launch that or how I'm going to launch that yet, but it'll definitely be within the next year.
Do you plan on? So it sounds like that's just a pet project you've been working on for years and years and years. Now that you've measured the sort of gauged the demand and the success that you've had, do you plan on creating a regular comic, like a weekly or monthly sort of thing?
I think it's a little too hard to do and still have a day job to have a completely weekly or monthly thing at this point. The management of the process and all that's a lot. And artists are also very slow. So I would say my artist takes about 2 to 2.5 months to do one issue.
I hate to interrupt you, John. You are breaking up really, really, really badly.
I want to keep the art.
Oh no, I thought that was my internet.
No.
I can. Hold on, just a second. You guys talk.
I think it's all the KO. I think it's gummed up his internet.
The kale, it wrecks things around it, even secondhand. Usually when things like this happen, though, it's like somebody else started download on the internet or whatever. It just.
Is that better? My internet's actually in good shape, so I'm kind of confused.
We have no idea why it happened. You just all of a sudden started dropping out. So
it may not have been us. It may have been infrastructure in your area, or you know what? It could just be the curse of the Geek Gab.
All right. Well, there's a lot going on. I'm definitely not able to do a monthly comic with it at this time, just because I have a day job. My artist kind of has a day job, so but we would love to get there eventually.
And one of the things that Diversity in Comics has made a point about is that when comics were a monthly thing and they were selling well and people could move through them, the art was a lot simpler than it tends to be today. And I believe that the modern art definitely looks a lot better, and it's great. It's eye candy. It's pure eye candy to get a comic book with that highly detailed art. But if the price of that highly detailed art is that you can't actually support an industry and you can't actually support a monthly comic, then it's too high a price to pay. And in many instances, the simpler coloring specifically really added a lot to panel layout and how you made certain things pop and certain other things recede into the background, and it made the action scenes have more impact, and it made dramatic events have more impact because all the background stuff that you needed there for context but wasn't super important was in one color, and then the active stuff was in a couple of other colors. And so despite the fact that as pieces of art, modern comics, as detailed as they've been drawn since, let's say since the Image era or just immediately before that, it makes it impossible to sustain a monthly comic. And so that's something I think that the industry is going to have to grapple with, but they're not going to because they're concerned about other things.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It definitely puts a hamper on things because you lose the consistency when you have to rotate artists or whatever. And I'm choosing just to, do the same storyline with one artist as he can do it. But then you lose the sort of binge people who want to tune in every month, right? I mean, there is a back and forth sort of trade-off there. And the only answer is to do something a little more simply. But that's why you see things like, Control Alt Delete and Penny Arcade and things like that get such high followings because they're able to do it every day and put it up there every day. So there's something to tune into every day, and it becomes a habit.
That's a tough business. I wouldn't want to be in that business. You have to put something out every day or every other day.
Yeah, I'd burn out.
Especially. I'm glad you mentioned the webcomics because not only do you burn out, but I mean, the webcomics, we lost quality a long time ago, especially Penny Arcade is probably the best example. Quality of jokes were always, webcomic quality, and after a few years, they just lost it. And they keep putting stuff out every week, and in my opinion, it's barely readable anymore.
Yeah, I haven't read it in years. Same thing.
Did you ever read what Bill Watterson had to say about comics? He called the funny pages comics graveyard. All these comics it was dead comics that had long since sort of finished telling all the jokes that you could tell in their format. Stuff like BC or Beetle Bailey or Garfield especially, and they just keep going, and that's why he quit early.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a thing. I mean, Scott Adams still has to draw Dilbert every day. It's like, it definitely stifles your creativity, I think, after a while to do any one thing. But that's true of anything. I mean, if you look at, I'll just use Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern because she's no longer alive, and I can't actually hurt her business at this point. And she's also my favorite author. She, the first few Pern books were just fabulous, and then she kind of went off into different concepts and to different time periods and things like that, and told some interesting things. But by the end of her life, it was, oh, well, we have a contract for another Pern book, and you better put one out because this is the moneymaker. We don't care about your other books. And she just kept having to do it. And you see this, I mean, same thing with, David Weber in the Honorverse, right? He keeps having to kind of do that and kind of keep it in that vein over and over. So if you look at comic strips and Garfield and Dilbert or wherever, that's the same creative rut where it's not creative for them anymore because they're forced within a certain format. And I can't help that because readers want more of the familiar that they love, and that makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But that's why I'm all over the map with doing 50,000 different things, because I just want to have fun ideas all the time and not be stuck in a rut.
I think that's the exact same thing that has blighted Adam Sandler movies. People wonder, they say, well, why has Adam Sandler got so bad? Adam Sandler got so bad because he made comedy movies, and they were very, very successful. He made a lot of money for himself and for other people, producers and whatnot. And then he wanted to transition to doing not just full comedy, but also drama. And it turns out he's actually a good drama actor. He can pull off drama, but he didn't make a lot of money at it, and nobody wanted to cast him in a drama. He couldn't get cast in dramatic roles in Hollywood. And so if you don't have scripts, if you don't have people willing to pay you to come on and be in their drama, then you're kind of screwed. And so he has been forced to go back into comedy and keep on remaking the same style of movies he was making 20, 30 years ago. And he is bored, and he's so bored, and you could see it on his face. He has to do this because it's like his career, and he needs to keep on making money, but he's much, much better than the material he's been given, and he doesn't have an opportunity to actually do that. And that's why his movies are bad, because he's getting lazy about them. He just puts them together, throws them out, and if they make more money than they cost to make, then it's a success, and he's kind of trapped.
Yeah, and you're kind of forced with that choice as an artist, where it's you can do the thing that made you popular on repeat and still make some money and have people gripe about it, and you're bored, and a lot of the people who are actually looking for different story concepts are also bored. Or you can choose to just kind of I'm going to be the full-on artist, and I'm just going to do what I want. It's hard to do an in-between, you don't see a lot of that.
Christopher Nolan managed it for 6 movies because he had to, where he would, he made Batman Begins, and it was so super popular that they said, okay, we want you to come back and make The Dark Knight. And he's like, okay, but if you want me to do that, I also get to make this weird little indie, bizarre dream movie I've had an idea for it. I've been working on for a decade, and the movie studio was like, okay, fine, we'll let you do it. And all of a sudden it's that too, his weird little passion side project made $200 million, and everybody was like, oh, okay. And then he does The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises, and then Interstellar. And so he got lucky that his weird artistic stuff was also fabulously successful. But even that, there isn't a direction to go in that world that you can have a sequel to it. So it's done. He's over and he's done, which is admirable. I love that movie. I love Inception, but and he doesn't have to make sequels to it, even despite the fact that it was a huge success.
I remember Ben Affleck had a line, I think it was in Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, when it was you do the safe flick, then you do the arty flick, then you do the safe flick, then you do the arty flick. And every once in a while, you do the film for a friend, and then he breaks the fourth wall and looks at the camera. That was like one of the funniest moments.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That might have been the last good film that Silent Bob did.
Yeah, it was for sure.
All right, so let's talk about your other comic here, which again, Ember War. There's a link to the Indiegogo where you can buy it in the description below. What's up with that?
What's up with that? Yeah, it's kind of.
Those are the penetrating and insightful questions our audience comes to this show for. They know that they are going to get not just a host who sits there and throws softball questions at a guest. They know they're going to get hard-hitting and insightful questions like that. Proud of this show like that.
Whew, I really feel the pressure now. The Ember War kind of came about. I was doing that Flying Sparks thing with Jethro, my artist, for years. And what I did is I just set aside $100 out of my paycheck like every month or whatever, and he just did a page or two while I had the script done. So it's it stopped being like, you're really excited about an idea when it comes out, and then it's like 2 years later when you're still getting it made because it took that long because art's so expensive. It's not that exciting anymore. It's just like, but I kept doing it for a long time. I don't know why I kept at it, but I did. But I've always loved comics, right? So eventually I was like, okay, I've got a following now, and I want to make a comic, and I want to do this. And that alt hero campaign last year was just so big that I was like, okay. So I was actually planning on doing something like these back then, and I thought, well, gosh, I want to do this. And so I started brainstorming with Vox Day, and I was like, what should I do? And Vox is like, well, you've got a small following, but it's not, I don't think it's big enough to sustain like comic art, because I know how much comic art is. It's very expensive. And this is before all this. I didn't know Flying Sparks was going to be a success. I really thought Flying Sparks would make $6,000-$8,000 and barely cover the art costs, not even cover the print costs. But I'd already paid for the art anyway. Like that's what I was expecting, right? And I expected this all along. So we were like, well, what if we can like marry my work with like somebody big in the Amazon world's work and like do something big? And that sort of came about. And Richard Fox was up against me for the Dragon Award for military science fiction last year. And he was a guy, and I had no idea who he was. And suddenly, and I thought, these guys are going to all split, and I've got split their audience, and I've got my own audience, and I'm going to win this Dragon Award handily. I was all smug about it. And then Richard Fox just kicked my butt. He got a lot more votes than me by far. And I was like, who is this guy? And so I added him on Facebook because I'm prone to do that. And I just started talking to him, and it turns out like he's just a great guy, and we have a ton in common, which is cool. And then I read his book, and I was like, wow, he writes these like epic military science fiction books like that are like basically movies. Like this could be formatted into a movie. And I told him this, and we just started talking over a couple months, in tandem with, what comic should I do, Vox? What comic should I do, Vox, on the other side? And, I eventually asked him the question. I'm like, well, have you ever thought about making your books into a comic? And he goes, yeah, I'd love to. And he goes, I have no idea how to go about doing that. And I'm like, well, I know how to do that. And that's literally how it started.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're doing the adaptation. You're taking his books and adapting it to comic form.
Right.
How much input does he have over what comes out in the script?
He's basically acting as editor. So I originally broke it down, and I told him, okay, this book, this has been such a challenge, like creatively, because it's been a very different thing than I've ever done, because it is taking somebody else's, trying to be faithful to it, trying to change its medium so it works. And yet, you mentioned having to have dialogue that's very short and all that. Like, in books, we're so used to people having like sprawling speeches and back and forth dialogue, and it's just people talking back and forth about events so much. You can't do that at all in comics. Uh, so there are challenges there, but he actually wrote a pretty action oriented piece. So thankfully I had that. I talked to Chuck Dixon on this, when I started getting going on it, because he adapted the Wheel of Time. And I was like, how'd you adapt that? And he goes, that was just a train wreck, because the Wheel of Time, you have no idea how hard of a book that is to adapt. And I thought about it and I'm like, wow, yeah, I guess these 1,000 pages sprawling where, you only get action in like 50 of those pages would be very hard.
Yeah. And Jordan loved to have his characters act in idiosyncratic ways, and there's lots of nonverbal communication in those books. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, he said it was basically a nightmare. And he's like, so I don't have great advice for that. And I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. But
don't adapt the Wheel of Time. That's good advice. Don't adapt the Wheel of Time. So.
Don't adapt the Wheel of Time.
Mark that down, folks.
Story. I like that story. We're like, so I sent a message to one of the most well-known comics writers in the industry today, and he said, I can't help you.
Yeah,
that's what I got. That story.
That's a good story. But so yeah, I basically I kind of split it up into 5 issues immediately. I saw how it broke down into 5 pieces. It actually broke down into 4 pieces, but I wanted to break up the last one so that I could like really extend the action and have like a cliffhanger on 4, and then really have just a ton of action, just because it sounded more fun. So I did it that way, and then I kind of told them how it laid out. And then I actually break it down page by page after that for each chunk I'm doing. I dog-eared my book. First issue is like page 1 to page 120, and I dog-eared it there. And then I lay out each page, and I give him the outline of each page, and I say, do you approve this? I think on the outline stage, he's been I think he made me change 1 scene so far, and I've written 4 out of the 5 issues. So there wasn't. So I guess I did it to his liking.
It strikes me, that one of the things that people don't realize about media is that the form of the media, the structure of the media, has a much, much bigger impact on the content than you might assume. And I'm going to use an analogy here. Back in the days where all everybody had was long playing vinyl records, there was an art to designing an album. You had to start off the album with a great song to draw people in, and then you drop down in quality a little bit for the next 2 songs, and then the 4th song had to be so good that it made people want to flip the record over and hear the rest of the album. Then you drop back for the next couple of songs on the next album. You started good, drop back for the next couple of songs, and finish great to make people want to tell their friends about it. So the form, the physical nature of an LP disc dictated how you designed an album. And it also gave a lot of opportunities, because it was so big, you had an opportunity to do cover art and things like that you couldn't do in CDs, and you can't do ever digitally. It's a tragedy. And there's a little story with that, but it's too much time. And so to flip back to comics, 22 pages and then a hook for the next issue is how a traditional comic is done, or the story's over. I mean, traditionally, the story's over and you're on to a different story. But if you're having a continuing story like Shonen Jump Weekly or whatever, manga, you would have a hook for the next issue, so people would want to come back and get back to it. And so if you're doing a trade paperback, though, you don't have to worry about that, except keeping readers interested enough to move along. And so transitioning something from one medium to another is so difficult, because you have to take something that ideally is finely tuned for this medium and change it for a completely different medium.
Yeah, I planned on doing this. We weren't planning on doing an Indiegogo originally. We were planning on just going straight to Amazon, because his market's all that Amazon algorithm goodness that all the indie authors talk about, right? And we were just gonna release it 1 month after another, just like a regular comic book thing. So we designed it in that format, like you said, where you've got you've got the kind of the arc, and then like the last page or two is the hook and like lead in or cliffhanger for the next issue. So we definitely did that, and I'm good with that format because I've written so many issues of Flying Sparks at this point. I mean, I've written through, I think, 10 issues of Flying Sparks at this point. So I've definitely gotten that format down. And so that's how we did it. We wrote it like it was going to be single issue comic books on the stands. Now the graphic novel is going to come out first, but it still works because he kind of broke it into acts like that, because that's kind of how movies format themselves in that like 3 or 4 or 5 part sort of setup. So it'll make for a nice graphic novel and single issues, and that's the goal at the end of the day.
Well, we have got just about 15 minutes left in the show. I know we started late.
Sorry.
So maybe we have 20
fault.
20 minutes late. Maybe we have 20 minutes left. And so I wanted to jump to the Indiegogo. My thesis, and I have not seen anything to disprove it, and my own personal experience bears it out, is that the huge success that has been seen by many people on Indiegogo is great, and it's wonderful to see, and I encourage people to be as successful as possible. But I don't think that price-wise, convenience-wise, and audience scope-wise, there is much future there. We mentioned earlier in the show of fatigue. But even if there isn't fatigue about Indiegogo itself, I'm sick of Kickstarter, because when I make a promise to pay them in 30 days, I have no idea what my financial situation is going to be like in 30 days. Whereas with Indiegogo, I want to buy something, I put in the money right now, it takes the money right now, and then it goes on. And so I much prefer that to Kickstarter. But even so, I backed like 14 different Comicsgate Comics projects. And since I backed the last one, there has been 10 to 20 more come up. And I'm like, I can't do that at 25 or 35 bucks a pop. I just can't. I don't have physically that much money. And even if I did, I don't have that much time to read these things once I get them. And so what people have to look at is that what they should be looking at, and I know that Ethan Van Sciver is, what they should be looking at is solving a distribution problem to get this into a place where normies can see it and want to buy it and are willing to buy it. And that's difficult with comics to do digitally. It's much easier to do in the physical store. And digitally, you have to work with a place like Comixology. You have to go through a whole lot of work laying out your comic for a different form, again, different media that determines the form of the comic. You have to work with them to lay it out. And it's just, it's a problem that I hope people in Comicsgate who are producers who want to keep on selling, who have staked their career on selling as an indie comic author, I hope they're looking at solving this problem or addressing this problem.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. There is a problem there. I mean, people bought into these Indiegogos to such a big thing to make a political statement, really. They were trying to tell the comic industry, we don't like what you're doing, and we're going to go to these alternative comics, right?
And it worked. Sending that
and it worked. Message sent. So what happened was, the first dozen or so creators got in there, and it was, everybody's still on board for the message. Just the first couple months. People can back a few of these and be happy. And now everybody's spent a couple $100 and they don't have books yet. And that's hard. So the people who are coming in now, and so to some extent, this includes the Ember War. The books that are coming in now are saying, hey, John, we haven't gotten your last book yet, and you've already got a book up. And I'm like, well, I kind of got to, because I've got business partners and this is really their project, right? Like Richard Fox wants his book out, and I can't just delay it. So there is that. But I think there's a twofold. There's fatigue of just not getting things. There are too many projects now, and so it's diluting everything, and everybody can't back everything, and everybody kind of made their statement on the statement end. So it is dropping back to just the people who want the comic that they see online, that seems like it'll be something that fits them for a comic. So in some ways, it's getting back to what the core audience is. And a lot of people who don't have followings already couldn't ride this wave easily So it's a weird different thing, but the comic Kickstarters have gone on forever, and there's successful people on it, just like there are board games and all that. And I don't think there will be fatigue and a problem for people who have followings or are building followings. It'll be smaller, and you'll be able to do it, and you'll be able to do volume 2 or whatever, and people will probably come on board for that for the most part. I think that natural version is there. I think the rush of a zillion projects at a time isn't going to be there. And so this is not a viable like alternative industry, but it is a viable business model for a few creators. Now on the back end, we are actually working on things to make things cheaper and all that. I don't know about some of these guys. I mean, some of them, the whole 48 pages for $25 plus shipping is really tough. And that's why I immediately went out with Flying Sparks, which was 66 pages with bonus content of I think 14 pages. So it ended up being about 80 pages worth of comics for 25, and that's why I went out with the Ember War with 120 for 35, which is more standard graphic novel prices. Now I've still got the shipping aspects to deal with because I'm not a big company with big print things and all that. Who can just ship out through Diamond or whatever, and it costs me nothing to do. Marvel and DC have their contracts and all that, and even have shipping contracts and all that make things a lot cheaper, and that's why they can keep their prices points at what they are. But I'm working on that sort of thing, with my printers and all that. And I think at least next time I do Flying Sparks, I should be able to do it without a shipping cost on top of it, which lowers the price there on that end. And we're working on it. So, and we're also, I'm going to be doing an Amazon strategy because I come from books first. So I'm going to be putting out my next book, which is going to be called Dynamite Thor, just on Amazon without an Indiegogo, to try to see, okay, does the market work here through Amazon like it does through books? Am I going to be able to do it on that end? So we're going to be trying a lot of different things. It's the Wild West right now.
I keep on thinking that the Comicsgate people, what they need to do is they need to form their own sort of image. And that's going to be a problem because as soon as they make that big target and it's all these people who've been made controversial by the psychopaths currently in the industry, they're going to be doing their best to make sure that their company doesn't get into any stores. But I don't see and then there's the secondary problem that Marvel's killing off stores anyway. And so where do you go from there? But I don't see them being able to get, you have to cross over into normiedom. You have to cross over into a large population. If you want to keep on growing, you want to keep, you want to keep getting bigger and bigger and getting paid. You have to cross over into normiedom. And I don't see, that's difficult without getting into stores.
I don't see stores as the end all be all anymore, guys. I see comic stores going the way of the bookstore, and I don't think there's anything that can be done to stop it.
Personally, judging by the people who come in and get their monthlies or weeklies, that may not be a bad thing.
Ooh, that's painful. That's mean.
Oh, huge slam on comic book nerds everywhere.
I can't say that. Those are my core audience, my friend.
Oh, in all seriousness, I was thinking along the same lines as Daddy Warpig. Not comic book stores, but I was just in the supermarket the other day, and I looked at all the magazines on the shelf. In the aisle where the impulse buy aisle with the candy bars and stuff. And I remember supermarkets and little stores used to have comics racks. You used to be able to get, all the latest, Marvel, DC, Image, whatever. They'd be up there, just on a rack for you to grab. I don't know if that's viable anymore, but what happened to that? Can we not get into Walmarts or regular stores anymore? Does it have to be a specialty comic store?
That's the main issue. I think the specialty comic store is not going to be around in 10 years, guys. It's just
every comic store I've seen and attended, because they often also host games. So because they can't make money, they've got maybe a dozen people who, they get their orders, pull list. That's what it's called, the pull list. They come in and every week or every month they get their comics. And they leave, and that's part of their core income. And then they have to supplement with gaming and stuff, right? None of these comic stores have survived on comics alone. And nowadays, you can't even survive on comics and magic. You have to serve food and drink as well if you're
Yeah,
gonna make it.
it's getting there, right? They're becoming like lifestyle coffee shops in a way, you know.
And
And
they're
that's okay.
very popular around here in the Pacific Northwest, let me tell you.
That's totally okay to have, and that's totally okay to do. But I mean, for authors and all that, it's like, I mean, I can say I love my indie bookstore down the street, and I try to buy from them as much as I do. And I'm talking books.
Yeah.
And but my core business is Amazon still, and it's going to be that way. And I think you know there might be a different thing through comics through Kickstarter a little bit, but I think Amazon is the way to solve all the shipping and printing cost problems, to make it more viable and for people to actually just be able to buy something and read immediately also. So that's where I see it having to go.
And that may not last. Reading about rumors that, and I don't know the facts of the business, but Amazon apparently gets a lot of their shipping subsidized. They taking advantage of generous prices of the U.S. Postal Service and so on for their local shipments anyway. That may not even be a long-term solution. That may be just a medium-term solution.
Totally. I think that's true, and prices are going to come up at some point, when that gets addressed or dealt with. But then the prices will be at what they should be. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough thing just because the art for comics is so expensive and it has to be because these artists, it takes, like I said, it takes 2 months for my artist to draw the lines for a book. It takes my colorist a month to do the colors for a book. So they have to sustain their income. That they have to have a month or two worth of income in order just to be able to do it, right? I mean, so you have to price that in, then you have to price the full color printing in, then you have to price shipping in. So it's almost like costs have to come up on the indie level, and people either got to go for it or don't.
That may not be a terrible thing. I mean, I hate to say this, but the harder it is to make a living on it, the harder it is to churn out that 4-color factory product with cheap art and easy storylines. The more sort of fun, bespoke hobby comics we're going to get. I keep drawing parallels to the game industry because the market's so similar. The stuff we see coming out of Kickstarter as far as game quality, the quality of games isn't that much better. I'm looking at a box of Rising Sun right now, famous Kickstarted board game, and mechanics-wise, it's good. It's okay. It's not close to my favorite, but the production value is very high. It's a gorgeous box with handmade art, nice paintings. It's got giant plastic miniatures, that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? So
This is the same thing we're dealing with in indie books, though. I mean, if you go on Amazon, there's a full range of just like professionally done books. People who really had no business being in the business and put up something terrible, and then the production quality of the covers and all that are run that gambit also. So it's like you almost can't tell. But you know what, you find a couple creators you really like, and or a couple board game designers, for example. There's a guy who runs Kickstarters constantly on for board games, and he's gotten bigger now to where he's getting real distribution at Target and stuff like that. It's called Red Raven Games, and his production quality is very high. His game designs are very high, and he was just an indie guy. So it's like you'll find a couple that you like and you can support, I think. And as you solidify in that, just like with books or whatever, you'll have less room for new authors. It just kind of is how it goes for your own personal budget, and then you'll just stick to what you got, right?
I like it as sort of that's an easier future to imagine, where instead of we go back to a big industry with big publishers and distribution and things like that, we go back to niches and maybe star authors or star artists, that sort of thing. Comics have always had that sort of thing, but I got the impression that at least through the mid-century that was more of a product of the sort of insular nature of the industry. It was the same 24 guys working on all these comics. Kirby and all them.
definitely was like that because the big publishers are, they can only hire so many people, and then they kind of hire each other's friends. And now you can kind of get outside that. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, as a new artist or author, I mean, you really want to target younger people and see if they can get hooked on your books so that they kind of sustain with you. I mean, it's just like any other artistic business.
Interesting.
All right. Well, we are almost out of time. Do you have any last words before we kick off?
Yeah, please back the Ember War. We still need to get there. I think we crossed 16,000 today, so we only need 4,000 more to fund. Which I have no illusion that we won't get there. I'm very sure we'll get there, which is great. But we have a lot of stretch goals. We planned for a lot because we want this universe to continue. And Richard really wants to make all 9 books in the series into a big graphic novel collection, so everybody can just read it in graphic novel form, which is very cool. And we want to get there. So help us out there. The Ember War is. Richard calls it a Michael Bay movie with marginally better dialogue. I think he's much better than that. Personally, that's kind of a self-deprecating thing, I think. But yeah, I mean, definitely there's a lot of action, a lot of explosions, lots of alien fighting, and there's also good characters. And I make sure to really, if you know me at all, I'm very character focused, and I like to draw out the character in people. And so if you like what I do with dialogue and things like that, and you like some cool action movies, you'll like it. And if you like the Ember War already, this is going to be a very faithful adaptation, and you'll love it.
Hey, that gives me a question to ask to follow up on that, on your characters. I still have your Knights training and the Fight for Islandia in my queue to read. Are your other real books on hold while you're knocking out these great comics?
No, I've been doing. I'm going full pulp speed, guys. You influenced me in that. Both of you guys, Dornall and Daddy Warpig, you guys got me on that train. Jeffro, if you're still in the chat, I mean, I owe Jeffro Johnson everything. He changed my whole perspective on the world. I'm just plowing out ideas as fast as they come to me, and that's what I think was what the pulp was about, and that's how you keep things exciting. So I shift things up, and I've got a bunch of different things I'm working on, just so I'm always excited about whatever I'm working on whenever I'm doing it. And my steampunk book, The Fight for Rislandia, just came out on Thursday. 3rd #1 new release in a row. So that's churning along just as well. My alt hero novel, I think, is going to drop in the next month or so, maybe in the next 2 months. And then I've got a short fiction collection probably I'll have before the end of the year. So I'm going same speed as books as I've always gone, and I'm doing comics on top of it.
That sounds amazing.
Anything else to say before you kick off, Dornall?
Well, thanks for coming on and chatting with us, especially on relatively short notice. And it's always good talking to you and Daddy Warpig. And thanks to the chat, whom I haven't been able to join today because I'm not on the phone in the woods. So I hope everybody had a great time listening. And talk to you again next week.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, folks. This has been Geek Gab for Saturday, September 29th, 2018. Be sure to click like, subscribe to the show if you haven't subscribed already. Click the little bell icon. Ring the bell, as all the big YouTubers are now saying. Make sure to ring the bell so you get announcements about when we're going live and anything else we might happen to upload, which doesn't happen all that often, but it's possible. It's potential in the future. And if we do, it'll be something brand new, and you do not want to be left out. Oh, you can get us all over on YouTube at Geek Gab, youtube.com/Geek Gab. But we are also available on SoundCloud.com. We're also available on the Google Play Store, and we are also available on the iTunes Store. So you can subscribe to this show on the device of your choice. Just do a search for Geek Gab, and you can get us on all of those platforms. Thanks for tuning in today, folks. We're signing off. We're heading out. But don't you worry. Don't you fret. We will be back.